Noisy Pixel.
Such plans, all thwarted by one man, Nicholas Rain.
What does it take to stand out from the crowd? Is it a fresh, new look, or maybe just a whole crazy mix of everything and anything that's awesome? Having played id Software and Avalanche Studios' co-developed open-world and insane shooter earlier this year, it's clear that I thought it stood out from the massive crowd of open-world shooters that all promise to be vast and epic. It's fun, chaotic, and loud. However, there are parts to it, like the story, characters, and world building, that might make players rage a little. I'm Brad Crespo, and this is Noisy Pixel's review of Rage 2.
When do I start?
Scritch scratch. We got your John H. and we good to go.
Rage 2 is set in a post-apocalyptic world where an asteroid has annihilated a good chunk of the Earth's population. If that isn't bad enough, ruthless and bloodthirsty gangs roam about as they're on the hunt to scavenge what remains. To top it all off, what you'll really be worrying about is the menacing General Cross, as Walker, the last ranger of the wasteland who's basically like a super soldier, who you can choose to be either male or female. It's up to you to rage against the machine that is the Authority, taking down thugs along the way, in a crazy fight for justice and freedom. While Rage 2 follows the events after the first game, there's absolutely no need to play the original to understand the story and characters in the sequel. All of the characters involved in this deadly carnival of survival aren't all that memorable though. The primary culprit for this is that the game tries to do too much with its narrative. It wants to be comedic and wild with its edgy jokes and moments, but it also tries to be overly dramatic at times, which just feels out of place. However, I did enjoy female Walker's sassiness. With that said, ultimately, the characters and story aren't going to keep you playing. It's Rage 2's do anything and everything you want open world gameplay that will. The main toy in this playground of sorts is the superhero-like abilities known as nanotrites that you can acquire. Each nanotrite is both handy and insanely rad to have since they make combat so much more satisfying. Enemies, however, can be difficult to take down, so expect to get into some tough battles. With that said, combine the nanotrites with the full arsenal of upgradable weapons at your disposal, and you got yourself one heck of a good time. What's more is that there's the ultimate ability, Overdrive, that transforms players into a beefed up powerhouse that adds yet another layer of fun with the game's impressive, intuitive combat. Combat is the delicious bread and butter of Rage 2, but exploring its open world is the full-on eat whatever you care to eat buffet that can be as satisfying and plentiful as your heart desires. Essentially, it's up to the player to decide how things go. But for me, there never really was a dull moment traversing across the game's open world, as there was always something that I wanted to do. However, I wish that the open world was more connected to the story and characters. It basically is a big space filled with several missions to choose from. The core missions are well structured, full of moments that always get your blood pumping. The side missions, on the other hand, may seem more like a chore list. Exploring around the world of Rage 2 is even grander thanks to the game not having the usual bleak and lackluster color palette like in the previous game. This time around, Rage 2 features a more vibrant, colorful, and sprawling world that has 5 distinct areas, which are mostly fun to stroll through. The reason I say mostly is because 3 of the areas are well developed and full of life, but the other 2, which you need to discover, are somewhat underwhelming and empty. On a different note, the visuals are nice enough and the sound design is pretty impressive. Rage 2 isn't a snooze fest, it's a wild carnival full of fun and destruction. Sadly, the game's lackluster, disjointed narrative and characters make the vast open world less memorable than it could have been. If you're going into Rage 2 to just go on a full throttle, no holds barred rampage though, you won't be disappointed at all. Noisy Pixel is giving Rage 2 a 7.6 out of 10. Thanks for blasting into our review. You can read our full review at noisypixel.net. Noisy Pixel is ran by a group of gamers who work hard to deliver news, reviews, previews, and more. Please subscribe to keep up with all of our future content.